to you, Governor.
Okay. Wow. Taking some pictures.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. As we are here to brief not only you, but the public of the city of New Orleans and that also of the state of Louisiana. We are joined by our governor, Bel Edwards, and at this time I will turn over the podium to him, and then we will proceed with our briefings as follows. Sir?
Thank you, Mayor Cantrell, for having me here today and the opportunity to meet with you and your team and for the partnership that we have established a long time ago, but that is certainly, I think, very important to us right now, given what we're dealing with this growing COVID-19 outbreak. We just ended a meeting of our teams where we shared information about our plans going forward in response to the coronavirus. Also talked about a proclamation that I issued this morning and making certain that we have seamless communication and coordination. As you probably know, about an hour ago, President Trump declared a nationwide public health emergency, and I certainly thank him for that. This is a very serious situation that demands the full attention of our nation and our state. There was a lot of information that was delivered just a short time ago and a lot of information to unpack, and I'm not going to have an awful lot to comment on from that press conference that just concluded. Suffice it for now to say that all of our state agencies will be digging into the information that was provided to find out how we can take full advantage as soon as possible for the state of Louisiana. An update on the testing that we have. As of right now, we have 36 presumed positive cases of coronavirus in Louisiana. Those cases are spread across 8 parishes. That is 13 new cases since yesterday, and the new parishes include St. Bernard, St. Charles, and Terrebonne. As we've noted before, there's a community spread of COVID-19 in New Orleans and potentially beyond. We know that there is one cluster of cases at Lambeth House here in New Orleans, which is both a nursing home and assisted living facility. Obviously, this is a very serious situation for our entire state, and it requires serious action. We've said this before and cannot stress enough. Those who are most vulnerable to COVID-19 are our elderly and those with chronic health conditions. And that is why yesterday steps were taken to limit non-essential visitation to hospitals, nursing homes, state prisons, and parish jails. But younger people play a role too. While you may not have symptoms, you could spread the illness to those who will, and I implore you to stay home if you are even slightly sick, and that's the entire population. Don't go to work. You know, it's time to be good neighbors to one another, and this is one of the things about being neighborly. So the proclamation that I issued does the following. In an effort to reduce and limit the spread of COVID-19 in Louisiana and to preserve the health and safety of all members of the public, all gatherings of 250 people or more between Friday, March 13, 2020 and Monday, April the 13th of 2020 shall be postponed or canceled. This applies only to gatherings in a single space at the same time where individuals will be in close proximity to one another. It does not apply to normal operations at locations like airports, medical facilities, shopping centers or malls, office buildings, restaurants, factories, manufacturing facilities, grocery or department stores. For example, please go to the grocery store if you need to. Go to the mall. Go to the pharmacy. However, if you are in a high-risk category, meaning you are elderly or have an underlying health condition, think twice about going out, and if you do, please practice social distancing. This provision may be extended beyond Monday, April 13th, 2020 by further order should the circumstances warrant that. To be very clear, and I think this will probably get at some questions before you ask them, this prohibition does apply to churches and houses of worship with congregations that exceed 250 in a single service. However, churches and places of the number of people in them below 250. It is important, and this is probably the one time a week where we know that the most number of elderly people and people with chronic health conditions are sitting in pews next to others for at least an hour. And so while it's a very heavy decision, it was one that was deliberate to include churches in this particular executive order provision. This is in keeping with guidance, by the way. The entire limitation on the size of crowds at these different events, the 250, it is in keeping with guidance from the CDC on community spread. It is to do everything that we can to limit the spread of COVID-19 so that we do what we've been talking about. The peak of cases won't be as high as it otherwise would be, and that we don't create demand on our healthcare providers all at one time. So we spread out that demand over a longer duration. I know also there's a major concern about our schools. Beginning Monday, March 16th, all K through 12 public schools across the state will be closed for 30 days, with classes scheduled to resume on April the 13th. And like all of our announcements, this situation will be reevaluated as we continue to monitor developments. It's important to note that school cafeterias will remain open for as long as possible to provide food for those students who need it. We will give parents and caregivers the opportunity to make, or we wanted to give the maximum opportunity to parents and caregivers to make arrangements. And we realize that sometimes grandchildren are placed in the care of grandparents when school is out and parents are working. To the maximum extent possible, please work around this situation. Again, the elderly population is most vulnerable, and while children, thankfully, are not impacted as severely, nearly as severely as other portions of our population, they do have the ability to spread the coronavirus. So I know that some difficult decisions are going to have to be made, but I'm asking everyone to do the very best that they can to keep themselves and their families safe. All public four-year higher education institutions have announced that they're going to transition to online distance learning. The dates vary at each institution, so I would ask that you all in the public consult with them to get those dates, go online, go to their websites, and so forth. As for our two-year institutions, Delgado, to the maximum extent possible, has already started its online classes. All other institutions within the Louisiana Community and Technical College system are preparing to go online as needed and as soon as possible. More information will be coming from the LCTCS system and from those institutions. Given the critical need of our healthcare system, we're encouraging all healthcare organizations to work with our medical students to keep them in their clinical rotations and on the job. Second, while ensuring that state government remains operational, we're going to lessen the need for face-to-face interaction by the public at agencies such as the Office of Motor Vehicles. In addition, each agency is granted the authority to determine if part of its workforce can and should work remotely. I am also directing cabinet secretaries to find ways to reduce the need for in-person meetings with the public and with various stakeholders. We are also asking all state agency heads to identify and maximize opportunities for their employees to use telework while maintaining their normal functions. Thirdly, we are adjusting our election schedule. As recommended by, and because I agree with the Secretary of State, Kyle Ordwin, later today I will sign an executive order to move the April and May elections to the June-July timeframe. This will obviously include the presidential primary. The reasons include taking into account the older age of the majority of precinct volunteers and workers and the need to reduce public contact, and also to allow maximum participation by all voters regardless of their age and their health conditions. Also, the Louisiana Public Service Commission has issued an executive order prohibiting all public utility companies from disconnecting customers for non-payment of utility bills statewide beginning today until further notice. The time for serious action is now, as our presumed positive cases number continue to rise. We must be vigilant to protect all Louisianans, especially as we see cases spread to different parishes. We must come together as Louisianans and do what we do best, and that is be good neighbors to one another, be resilient. We are a state that's been tested and tried many times, and this test, to be sure, is a little different than those that we've faced in the past. But when we unite to help each other, our strength is far greater than we realize. We must be responsible citizens and good neighbors. It's obvious that we're not alone in taking such serious actions. At least 5 other states have made similar announcements today and yesterday. Much of the sports world took necessary steps to prevent large gathering and protect fans and athletes. Even Disney World, for example, will close its doors for a period of time. Our colleges are arranging to have online instruction. All of us are considering how to arrange our lives to avoid unnecessary interactions. And I want to take another opportunity to stress the way in which every single Louisianan, everybody in Louisiana right now, these are the things that you can do to help us to make sure that we minimize the spread and the adverse consequences of the coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently and do so for at least 20 seconds with soap and water. And by the way, there's a lot of focus on hand sanitizer. That is not the best method to clean your hands anyway. The best method is soap and water, which remains readily available. So please use it and do that frequently. Cover your cough and sneeze into your arm if necessary. Avoid touching your face as much as possible. Routinely clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces. Avoid close contact with others and stay home if you are sick. We started a public service announcement campaign with LSU head football coach Ed Orgeron and the U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Jerome Adams. They can be seen on television and heard on radio, and they're also on social media. We ask that you take heed to and share these messages as much as possible. It is my fervent belief that the sooner we minimize the spread of adverse health consequences from coronavirus, that the sooner that we're going to return to the Louisiana way of life and get back to normal. But there is some period of time where we're going to have a new normal. And we expect that these cases will continue to increase for some period of time. And so we want to make sure that the public also has that expectation. But that's also why we're calling upon them to really make sure that they are doing those things that we've asked them to do as a precaution to minimize the spread. So I'm going to be followed now by the mayor, and I want to thank her again for the opportunity to visit you and your team and for the work that you and all of your team is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. And it's good to have you here, good to work with you and your team, and I appreciate your commitment to Orleans Parish and the state of Louisiana as we deal with COVID-19. As expected, the number of additional cases have increased, not only overnight, but even as we were having our recent briefing, that number increased. And we do anticipate, as it was reported, more cases to come. We are seeing significant community spread. To limit and slow down this spread of the virus, our best tools are that to mitigate, and we are moving forward with our mitigation efforts. That means closing of the schools. It also means canceling public events. As you've heard from our governor, all schools statewide are being closed for 30 days. Staying in communication and collaboration with the Orleans Parish School Board, NOLA Public Schools, our independent operators, as well as the Archdiocese of the City of New Orleans. They're doing everything possible to create distant learning environments. OPSB and NOLA Public Schools have been working with our schools for the past, weeks to prepare for this. Each school will be communicating independently and directly with families on the steps and resources that will be provided to support an ongoing student learning environment. So, again, the schools will be communicating directly with families, with parents, as it relates to the schools where their children attend. New Orleans Public Schools is also providing support across schools and will be identifying additional citywide and system-wide needs. NOLA Public Schools, in collaboration with charter school leaders, with the Mayor's Office of Youth and Families and other agencies, we're coordinating a prolonged effort to ensure child nutrition services during this time, making sure that nutrition meals are available to our families and to our children throughout the next 30 days and beyond should we need to. A request was made to the USDA and was granted as it relates to nutrition for our students, for our families. This also speaks to children not only in school but also across the board citywide, all of our children. The district will share resources with families for how they may access food and nutrition services, again, during this time and also starting with next week with the school closure. They're asking for, after that first week, the district anticipates a citywide child nutrition program that will be available for all of our families throughout the city of New Orleans. To support both functions, the Orleans Parish School Board, and thank you so much, OPSB, for doing this, passed a resolution granting NOLA Public Schools the authority to access $5 million for emergency spending needs. We appreciate that very much. As you know, the state has issued guidance limiting public gatherings to 250 people. The governor went through this very thoroughly. Here in Orleans Parish, we want people to use, of course, common sense and good judgment as it relates to this. We're seeing even with some businesses are practicing their own or instituting their own limitations of people who are frequenting their businesses, maybe 50 at a time, some 10 at a time. But this will be determined by the private industry and the businesses themselves. Enforcement will be complaint-based. And we'll respond as needed. The New Orleans Public Police Department is urging citizens not to gather in large groups until further notice to help slow down the spread of COVID-19. Again, this is coming from our New Orleans Police Department, and again, enforcement will be complaint-based, and we will respond. Please do not block public streets or intersections. It is a public safety risk without proper police presence. This also, again, speaks to the cancellation of public events, those that are permitted through the city of New Orleans. We're not going to be, out counting heads. We trust that our people will follow the rules and just be good citizens. Public safety and public health remain our top priority as we move through this and continues to. In addition, we will be restructuring the access to City Hall and city facilities. More of this will come. This will be a minimized and staggered approach as it relates to accessing City Hall. We will not allow more than 50 people, for example, to access City Hall. These practices will begin on Monday. Again, we will provide you with more information today as the processes are being finalized. City Hall is not closing. Your city government is functioning, and we are here to make sure that government runs for our residents, for our visitors, for our businesses. It's very important. City Hall is not closing. But again, we're making efforts to limit contact and reduce large groups. This also speaks for our employees, in which we will be communicating directly to employees of city government. City employees that are impacted by this outbreak will be placed on civil leave. Again, making sure that our people are consistently being paid. Also, this is paid leave. Okay, civil leave is paid leave. And we're calling on and encouraging private employers to do the same. What I do know, and from the Hospitality and Tourism Committee call this morning, many of our hospitality industries, in terms of hotels, are implementing their own policies, PTO, paid time off, for an extension of 14 days. This is not every hotel that I can report at this time, but you should know conversations are being had and we're making progress with that. My next call with this Hospitality and Tourism Committee will be at 4 p.m. This afternoon. Let's see, all meetings, and this is from our New Orleans City Council, we've been working hand in hand, but all meetings of the council, committees, and regular meeting will be suspended at least until the end of March. The council is closing the chamber for use by boards and commissions and is urging them to take similar actions. We've been communicating with our boards and commissions across the board. They have been notified. I do anticipate, and the governor will move forward, asking a resolution of the legislature to suspend public meetings laws. This is important for the city of New Orleans as it relates to our ability to continue to do business. During the council or the chamber closure, the council offices will remain open to serve their constituents, and preferably, by phone. We're doing a lot of conference calls these days. We're not breaking any public meeting laws at this time. We don't plan to break any laws, but you do know we are having effective conversations with multiple stakeholders throughout the city of New Orleans. I've organized over 13 committees of our stakeholders. These committees range from neighborhood leaders, faith-based communities, hospitality and tourism, as I mentioned, the business community, primary schools, which includes pre-K through 12, committee for colleges and universities, housing and independent living facilities, nonprofit community, transportation, utilities, vulnerable populations. It really goes on and on, but the city is organizing ourselves, therefore, the way that we communicate with all of our stakeholders city-wide. I had as I reported on yesterday, a neighborhood leaders conference call where over 1,600 residents participated on that call. I do anticipate scheduling another call with neighborhood leaders, and that information will be forthcoming. We are working very closely with our fellow elected leaders, both on the local, state, and federal levels. Yesterday, as I reported, I formally reached out to our congressional delegation for support at the federal level, and they've been extremely responsive. And as it was reported, our president declared a national emergency, and that really does help. It unlocks resources at the state level, and of course, that benefits us locally. As with the declarations the governor and I both issued yesterday, again, this will unlock additional resources, and we will update you as we plan and also facilitate any other public assistance. For individual assistance, we'll be making this information readily available. I have Also, I wanted to thank our community partners, particularly the Greater New Orleans Foundation, who has activated our disaster fund, and they are also a co-chair representing us on the nonprofit committee. United Way also stepped up, making available over $100,000 that has been contributed to this disaster fund. Let me tell you what we are not doing. We are not limiting the sale of alcohol. That was something that seemed to have been misconstrued based on the declaration that was made on yesterday. What it says that should it be necessary, that I have the authority to do just that. But as of now, we are not limiting the sale of alcohol. We are not shutting down private businesses or forcing them to close. While these closures and cancellations are extremely disruptive, the work of the city, it must go on. So the public health, again, is public safety, and that is our top priority. What I will ask right now is for Dr. Jennifer Avegno, who serves as our Director of Health, to come and give us the most latest updates and briefings at this time. Dr. Avegno?
Thank you, Mayor, Governor. As the governor said, we have 36 presumed positive cases in Louisiana. There are 26 presumptive positive cases of COVID-19 right now in New Orleans, and we expect that number to rise. This situation clearly indicated to all the leaders here that significant community spread of the virus and the time to act is now.